I think first and foremost, I speak for all of us when I would like to thank Aqua, Gabriel, West, and this whole series, and especially all of you for joining us and having us, so thank you for that. January 31st, 2024. I don't exactly remember the weather, but I'm pretty sure it was a bit gray, maybe wet, and maybe a wind was making its way from the mouths of the clouds, through the streets of Leiden, all the way to Science Park, where it found us and rattled our bones. And then we were together, a handful of quantum information theorists and artistic researchers, and we are crowded around a blackboard, and there's chalk in our hands, and we're each drawing lines and shapes and intersections and disruptions, forming ever-changing constellations in blue and green and pink and white too. We were, without knowing, already somehow exploring each other's practices, disciplines, histories, searching for intersections and points of contact. For the following months, we continued these discussions in our meetings, spending time figuring out and refiguring, arranging and rearranging, until we were invited to participate in an artistic research symposium at this year's Venice Biennale. And suddenly things fell into place, one after the other, and also all at once. We began to ask ourselves, where are our sites of research? What are the choreographies of our research? We found beauty in the poetic minutiae of our research movements, typing and pacing and writing and talking and lace-making and attuning. We developed a performance that isn't the outcome of a process, but the very process itself. How is our research performed? What actually happens when we perform our research together? What does it illuminate or obscure? We ask that you think along with us as we make a pair dis-a-pear. Enjoy.
Pear, pear, birne, pear, 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 birne, pear, 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 birne, pear, 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 pera, pera, birne, pear, pear. Pear, pera, pera, birne, pear, pear. Pear, pera, pera, birne, pear, pear. Pear,
How can I make aesthetic thinking visible? What kind of methods is this demanding? What do we make visible by performing different methods of research? Is there something like collective aesthetic thinking in it? Why do we even take some methods for granted and have to defend others? Different strands of knowledge, threads, can be linked together in multiple ways into a meshwork of methods, a meshwork of knowledges, a meshwork of visibility. Bobbin lace making is a handcraft that is based on a systematic alternation of twisting, crossing, knotting, and intertwining threads. We are thinking about how to make a pear disappear. Are we also stretching, bending, intertwining, crossing, twisting, knotting, connecting our threads of thought? Why would I want to make a pear disappear? Are we able to make a pear disappear at all? Do we simply transform the pear into something by getting our thinking infected by the pear? Or is the pear getting infected by our methods? Are we parasitic, using our research methods to get into the pear, letting the pear host us in order to feed our research processes? We're coming together at the table, at one table. We eat, we connect, we discuss, we observe, we have questions. We started with a pear. Now we want it to disappear. We're chewing the pear, we swallow the pear, we digest the pear. Our different approaches of making the pear disappear, stretch, bend, draw, voice, discuss, calculate, disrupt the pear. We're creating abstractions of the pear through our research methods, performance. The pear is our common ground. The pear connects us. The pear is the facilitator. The pear creates accessibility. The pear makes things observable. The pear renders us capable, figuring things out together. The pear morphs and shifts its configurations and outputs. The pear disappears into abstraction and thus transforms into a figure of collective thinking. We stake out an experimental field between a pear and our different research approaches. What dimensions of research entanglement do we enter by creating this experimental field? What kind of enmeshments are we figuring out by making visible and negotiating and pollinating each other's thoughts and habits? The thread of the pear interlaces our research methods into a patchwork of research performance outcome. The pear is an image. The pear is a code. The pear is a bobbin. The pear is a thought. The pear is an equation. The pear is a model. The pear is a sound. The pear is a bobbin. The pear is a thought. The pear is a model.
Philosophically is to formulate sentences about the pear. The essence of the pear is its pear shape. That would be an ontological statement. The ancient philosopher Plato would call it the idea of the pear. To be a pear, not to be a pear. And what does it mean to be a pair. The essence of the pair is not easy to understand, for the pair does not answer. For Plato, it was therefore linked to the ability of certain subjects of knowledge, namely philosophers, who were able to see the ideas and formulate sentences about what they saw. In contrast to this belief of the ability of the philosophers to see the truth, the philosopher Hegel developed a system of thought that works like an algorithm. Speculative dialectics. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Speculative dialectics is a thinking machine that arrives at a new level of knowledge through the juxtaposition of what is to be recognized as its opposite. What is the antithesis of a pear, a non-pear, an apple, the abstraction of the concrete, pear to, in its concept? Against this somewhat automated system of thinking and against the idea of a timeless essence of, let's say, a pear, the philosopher Foucault contextualizes the possibility of knowledge. For him, what has been said and written about a pear should be understood as the pear. He would look at recipe books, natural history trees, or love poems, discourse about the pear, to understand the pear's truth in a given epoch. So for Foucault, the real pear somehow does not really exist. So maybe we have to re-establish the real pear in philosophy. For the philosopher Kant, one way of understanding is judging. Judgment is an aesthetic understanding, and it is therefore a subjective insight based on experience. Kant examines aesthetic judgments and calls them judgments of taste. Judgments of taste are subjective and empirically related to singular cases. For example, a particular landscape, a specific work of art, or this particular pear. In the judgment of taste, we can develop an aesthetic understanding of the pear. Tasting a pear is to understand its truth, while chewing, feeling the pear with your tongue, turning it around, swallowing it. Please taste the pear. So what is your understanding about the truth of the pear now? Would you claim that your judgment of taste could also be shared by others as a common judgment of the pear? Although judgments of taste cannot be proven, for Kant they can be understood as aiming for general validity, and they are formulated accordingly. In Kant's understanding of the judgment of taste, we must say, the pear is sweet, if it is sweet. Not, I find the pear sweet. This statement is formulated as a proposition and claims general validity. At the same time, however, it refers to the particular pear in your mouth. Now we can observe that in the context of the judgment of taste, the object of investigation, the pear, first disappears. Like in all other cases of philosophical understanding, it is eaten. But what if the pear actually reappears when formulated in this judgment of taste? It appears in the formulated truth of its uniqueness as this pear and its original qualities. The judgment of taste is singular and general, and is therefore able to do justice to the truth of the singular pair. Now, maybe I have a new idea based on the Kantian judgment of taste. Could we possibly take the judgment of taste as an inspiration to understand knowledge production in the case of artistic research? Artistic research could then be understood as based on subjective aesthetic experience, but it's also brought into an artistic formulation claiming general validity.
Actually, I was wrong when I said this about the self-testing statement. So originally, let's erase this. Okay. So original self-testing statements would be M. So our quantum model is self-test. So the pair M and P. So where P is the. So yes, our quantum model is self-test by P.
Also defined it this way, or?
Yes, defined the same way as before. This is the same way. If and only if, exactly, for every other quantum model M, that is equivalent to M up to local unitary.
So local unitary is in the states and on the occurrence.
So on all of them actually, you see, like really, when we say the two models are...
Okay, but that's the definition they make in their paper. But I want to understand.
Yes, but I think this would be like...
between this definition and the usual one.
I think this is the usual one, no? Like usually you say when you have a state, you can replace the model just by the state, right? When you want to self-test the states, you say, okay, besides self-testing by giving them...
The usual one, you have a state and you have a set of measurements, and that's it. You don't even
care
about the unitaries or these quantum channels in the middle, you don't have, right?
But even like the simpler one, you don't even want to self-test the measurements, but just the states, right? So you have a state and you say, okay, it's self-tested by a probability distribution. If for every state that is equivalent to the initial state of two local unitaries, you get
up to isometries actually.
Yeah, isometries, yes.
Which is much more general.
It's even stronger.
I cannot say right now if this is a stronger or weaker definition or they're incomparable.
Well, I mean,
they come up with the same name,
so
but it's not.
Okay, instead here you would say this, right? So phi is an isometry, and you say, okay, for every state, the two are equivalent up to an isometry.
Sure.
When each time you have that phi satisfies the statistics, right?
Sure. I mean, this is anything you put here that.
Yes.
You have identity and therefore it's basically.
Now imagine you do the same, but instead of just self-testing the states, you want to self-test the model. The model basically
the model has the initial state, the quantum channels, and the measurements.
The channels, and the measurements, right? So in this case, what you do, you just replace. You say, okay, my model is
self-testable
by probability distribution. If for any other model up to local isometries, they are equivalent. Each time, any other model for any other model that satisfies the same probability. That's the way you would generalize.
Now I would like to know what is the simplest example that they have in this new formalism. Because,
so in this new formalism, they don't. That's the problem. At least here, what they propose instead is another definition of self-testing, which is...
So for them, this would be the natural definition?
This would be the natural definition,
but
yes.
It's too general, they cannot do anything with this.
I mean,
they have to restrict it somehow, no?
Exactly, I haven't seen anywhere where they... I mean, at least here they don't, this paper, they don't
So how do they fix it?
So here, maybe you can talk otherwise.
Well, wait. Did you hear that one sound through the mic? You can hear it because big inhale, yoga size type shit. You can hear the air coming from all around, pouring down his throat, just feeling air in his body running through veins. You know that feeling because you can do it too. If you want to breathe it in, breathe me in, this pair, the pair of us breathing. What a pair we are, what a pair.
And what happens to a pear food? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or does it fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
You can breathe in too, relax man. Breathe it in, breathe me in, breathe the pear in, but put it close to your nose. You listen to his voice, man. What a pair of ears you got, man. What a pair.
Pear! This fucking pear. This grainy pear, this mild pear, this rotten pear. Pear.
Did you hear that? He said pear, but didn't breathe out. Wow, pear. Want to try that too, man? Pear is the word. Breathe in pear, exhale pear.
Pear. This fucking pear. Grainy pear. Mild pear. Rotten pear. Pear.
Are you listening to this voice, man? Say it, pear with your mouth. Pear. Get to it, pear in your belly and your gut. Pear, say it with me, pear in your belly and your gut. Are you hearing this, man?
Pear! This pear, this fucking pear, this mild pear, this rotten pear, this grainy pear. Pear.
Say it.
Pear!
Say it with your gut. Pear. Exclaim it, whisper it, say it with me. Open your mouth, breathe out the pear in your belly, in your gut, in your lungs, pear in your body. Did you hear it, man? Try that. Open up your mouth. Move your lips. And what a pair you have. What a pair that is two things coming together. Pears forming pear. Two sets of teeth consuming pear. Two pears and a pear. Pear!
This is a fucking pear. This is a grainy pear. A mild pear? It's not a rotten pear.
Say it next time. Say it. Say it with your belly. Say it with your gut. Next time, say it.
Pear, this fucking pear. Grainy pear, mild pear, rotten pear.
This is a fucking pear. This is a grainy pear. This is a mild pear. This is a rotten pear. But did you say it yet? Shout it out, and I will too. I will shout it out with you.
Pear. 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 Did you say it yet? Did you shout it out yet? I will say it with you. Pear.
And 3. And 2. And 1.
Pear. Did you say it yet? Pear. I will say it with you. Pear. This is a fucking pear.
This is a fucking pear. Say it with me. Use your mouth. There's 2 lips. What a pear you have. Pear.
Pear. Fucking pear. Fucking pear.
This is a fucking pear. This is a grainy pear.
Grainy pear.
This is a mild pear.
Mild pear.
Say it with
to me, safe with the gut, with the belly, with the pear in your butt, in your guts, in your end of your butt. Pear. Pear. Rotten pear. Rotten pear.
Good job. Whose voice was that? Was that pears or yours or our pears? Breathe in with me.
Thank you so much. Well, as we said, we have time for talking, making questions, and hearing answers and discussing. So there's also a microphone over there that is available to make yourself be heard. So somebody wants to start maybe with a question, comment, idea.
Thank you so much for a beautiful presentation. Just a thought, I had the feeling that the pear was appearing and not disappearing. What do you think about that?
It's successful, huh?
Well, I can also answer like that. If you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the idea of disappearing was actually physics-based. So there was the title of the first performance was resistance and the disappearing of resistance. And there's a very nice effect in physics. If you cool certain materials down enough, the resistance, the electrical resistance, disappears. And I was talking about that, and I think Lewis actually misunderstood me. And he was like, what the heck, why are you talking about pears? Why are you talking about fruits? You're a physicist, you should be talking about physics. And he didn't say that verbatim, but I think that was implied. And so that's how the pear disappeared, or how this kind of title appeared. Now in the performances, yes, to a degree, I guess it more appears and disappears. But resistance disappears in physics, so this is where the title comes from. And you make a pear certainly disappear.
Yeah, and what kind of appearance are you talking about? Is it like an abstract appearance, or a conceptual presence, or a like simulation of a presence? So what is this key there? That's one of our questions. Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Thanks, I'll make it quick. Thank you very much for an intriguing combination of disciplines. No, that's not a joke. It was a fucking bear. I'm curious about the intersection here of the kinds of research, and do you feel that research is taking place in the performance, or is it about performing the idea or the residue of research?
I made the same question in our last meeting. I'm curious about it.
I think I can answer this one at least from my perspective. So because we used to do this performance already in Venice for the first time we did it, and there we really scripted, at least the whiteboard part was very scripted, and we did it with other physicists, nobody wasn't here. And yeah, there was definitely performing the research. But tonight, what we did with Jordi was like kind of what we would do. I guess usually just discussing
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, probably we'll do it. We will finish the discussion tomorrow morning. So it was not performing here. It was really research per se. Yes. Yeah.
This is a paper from 6th of November. So we were just trying to understand what they do and keep up with the literature. So that's the kind of discussions that we typically have. So it was actual research that we were.
So you're reacting in real time to
yes,
new information.
It's
Is that also true for the artist researchers at the table?
In my point, that is for mine is half and half. Yeah, because a part of it is obviously kind of prepared. And another part of it I'm reacting to here, and especially with the feedback situation. I had no idea how this was going to happen here. And then to me it's also like about understanding how my position, in this case of research here, with the sound and with the visuals was interacting with the others. So I think that this I can only find out when that's happening. I can't really prescript it. So that's kind of one point to the unknown that I think happens in the performance. But another part of it, yes, surely I called it that before. I had the PD data it's already before. It had other previous iterations of research before. So I think it's kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do this anyway. So yeah, I think any performance is everything. Because it's like, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, or maybe find the words to articulate how performance is a research method and what happens during that. So every time I'm in the process, like in situ, trying to listen, as Etienne put it so eloquently during our colloquia today, like listen with my entire body to what's happening. But yeah, so things are scripted, except for the part when I said the pears in your butt, and that was funny. So these like moments of like mistake, I think, are what I really enjoy, especially in constellation with everything else that's occurring. And Christine, Tini, and Anke and myself mentioned that yeah, we're still all searching for like how we make sense together. And this is one way of making sense of this. So yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's also a little bit a mix, but for me also the question was then, when I'm performing lace making, what does it mean then? Because also my research is about aesthetic thinking and to make it visible, but what is it then in this context? And also I'm reading text, which would of course be much better if I would just think along my bobbin lace making, but this is also, I'm not a performer, so also I have to kind of see how I work in this group. But I think the research for me is also, or the part that I take from this collaboration and this performance back to my own research is then questioning again or asking again, what am I actually doing here and what becomes visible and how is this connected to thinking? So yeah, good.
Yeah, and if I may add from the perspective of a philosopher, I mean, honestly, like performing in the moment doesn't create any kind of insight for me. But like having a performance as something that's going to take place as an event encourages, forces us to reconsider what we are doing while we are researching in its performative aspects. So if I'm asked to perform research, in this very moment I might not understand what I'm doing, but in preparing or developing that performance, I'm kind of like shifting focus. So this like development of the performance, and also of course it needs to be performed because it needs to have this intensity of taking place, right? So we can't pretend to do it, even though it might not take place in the very moment of performing, but like knowing that there is this moment of intensity forces us to honestly reconsider what we are doing. So the performative aspect is a method of understanding, but I would say more in this kind of lack of words, really, in going into the process of performing. Now on another level, and that's like me as a philosopher being interested in cosmology, like understanding research not only of myself, like trying to understand what I'm doing when I'm reading, quoting, going into these different methodologies like speculative dialectics or dialogic philosophy like Plato, but also interested in other people's research. This very process has been already incredibly valuable because I understood that they do performance, They came up with it themselves. Finding out that we called it at the beginning the blackboard dance. Because they came up with like, what do you mean by performing or doing research? And we're standing in front of these black, white, or whatever boards. And then I suddenly like, okay, but what are we doing there? Yeah, so maybe it's many layers of understanding, but part of it is the collaborative endeavor of not only understanding, but understanding by performing too. That's my way of
Yeah, first, pear. I'm really, thank you for the pear. It's already turning into something slimy in my hand. I think I already shared about this quantum psychology with that example before. But in the country where I'm from, there is a very, very popular form of workshops for rich and for poor, for all. So you could pay like 2,000 euros for 2 days. So quantum psychology is basically something akin to what was happening here. And I was really perplexed. Because there is a group of people who are mixing Kant, Hegel, organicistic thinking with some diagrams and sometimes even quotes and YouTube videos of the physicists. But what they do, they're actually giving you advices on how to make your life better. And what they do, they also trying to make the group less mechanicistic, because they're trying to be one organism, and it's their philosophy. And they're being organistic, and that's very interesting for me to reflect what was happening here. Because of my experience, or my experience, I don't know. But my experience was a bit partial. So I was seeing each part of your mediums, like, okay, now is Anke, and I was thinking how different it would be if you would actually all work on that board together with the medium of knitting, and then you go do the sound research, but all together, and not trying to do the partial work. And I think that could turn very malicious as a quantum psychology, because you could do some advices for us how to live better, or Or it could turn more absurd, but it's much harder, right? To try to integrate different medias which are very incoherent. And but I think there is lots of power there, and to actually step out of your research medium. And yeah, it's just thank you so much.
It's an interesting suggestion. I think we not yet ready probably to do it because we also appreciate each other's expertise. So I would like make an idiot out of myself if I pretend to like make this photosynthesis dance in front of the whiteboard, right? And I'm not gonna say that anybody's gonna make an idiot of himself reading Kant or Hegel, but like we all have our expertises, right? So, so what would we be doing if we kind of mimicry then rather than doing others' methods? It is an interesting question because what you are then probably start to understand is such a thing like bodily engagement. Because it's not only that I'm like having these equations, but I'm also like in the kind of, in the type of debate that is embedded in like trying to watch the other, asking with your I don't know what. And that's the interesting part if you kind of, yeah, imitate.
Yeah, I mean, we came to this point because we had really the kind of curiosity to know what would happen if everything's happening at once. But I also think that, like, from another point of view, I'm interested in what transdisciplinarity is. And to me, it is also like about the question of transparency and opaqueness of what is. So like, I don't need to make everything here transparent so that everyone can do exactly the same, but how do we meet in between? And that's to me perhaps a bit more interesting in the sense that what I think was powerful for us was to have this reference that keeps on going from here to there, which is just the mode of observing. So we had kind of like a camera. And I sort of like, because I'm, at least to me, like I find it interesting to find out the commonalities and the points where we meet, while retaining difference without, getting outside of the difference, because differences are also important. So what I mean by that is that make explicit what we are doing, yes, but this doesn't mean that everyone has to go along the same way. I mean, that's just a message.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Phil. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Shit, I forgot what I was going to say now. Okay, yeah. And maybe a bit of this, because I think for me in particular, one, we will be charging later for this as part of our scheme to fund the arts and artistic research. Secondly, for me, I think what was so wonderful is we had a moment in the laboratory when we first met, and we went to where they're trying to extract catch a singular photon. And there's like this whole beautiful array of lasers and mirrors and like this pump that makes this consistent sound. And like an Arctic refrigerator that needs to be like 5,000 degrees negative Kelvin or something. But what was so nice is we had this conversation about like how you need to fine tune all of these mirrors intuitively. There's no rhyme or it seemed that there's no rhyme or reason for tuning these mirrors to catch the laser. That it's just based on intuition and these fine like movements. And then for me, it was really beautiful for all of us to really focus on what are our like finer movements of our research, and how does focusing on that either connect us or not connect us in ways that we know or don't know and are still figuring out. And that leads me to maybe a question to all of you. Like, have you ever what do you do? One, don't answer that. That's a preface. But then also, how do you do it, and in what ways do you do it? And do you ever like actually just sit and reflect on the ways of doing the things that you do, and how those ways inform what you do?
In the overall practices of everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to concretize what kind of practices.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry, I was trying to be gentle, and now I backed myself into a corner. Whatever it is that you, whatever your practice is, whether it be artistic, research, people also, I think, is also a practice. Please, yeah, please.
So I have two things. First, kind of the example for you. When we were talking about this, how do we calculate in front of a board? We don't think about what we're doing, we just do it, right? So this is just the way we do things. And there was a very beautiful moment when Anke told me about this is also something that artists do, because I described the situation that you calculate and at some point you take a step back, because you're focused on that very tiny piece of the board and you actually have a board of, let's say, 4 meters or so. So you take that step back to see the whole calculation again. And this, letting the whole thing make an impression on you. This is something that you described as kind of this taking a step back from a piece of art to look at that. So maybe I was informed in exactly that way about the practice that I do by just talking to artists that tell me that what I do is actually a practice and that there's a method behind it. And that there are parallels between arts and physics that I hadn't seen before. So this is maybe an example for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay.
Thank you. Maybe just a comment. I found it very exciting. However,
I knew it.
Let's see this
I think you propose the pair, you propose this provocation, and I'm longing to understand and to be a part. But so I'm curious why you choose this very traditional upsetting to explore because isn't the formation of knowledge here? Yeah.
Here, like it's in there.
It's in the it's about the communication. It's about the sharing, right? Making in the making. But you are over there in sort of historic presentation of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking how exciting it would be if I could be in there with you, watching you work, not watching you work
from there,
from here.
We thought about that actually many times. We even thought that because when we were in Venice, we had arranged ourselves like that, and I think it was mostly just because of the physical limitations of the space. But then when we arranged ourselves today, we were questioning like, do we do it the same? We want to have people like on the stage.
Yeah.
I even thought that it just to put the chairs next to the wall and have you guys just come in and set up the chairs wherever you wanted. And I'm not really sure why we said I think it was left in the air and then we ran out of time.
But I think it would be a really interesting thing to try. And also questioning this, it's come up quite a few times today, this notion of performativity, of performance, and why couldn't you think out loud? You know, like I would find that really exciting. And why couldn't you have not prepared the text, but write the text in time? I would find that so exciting. This choreography is happening in real time, and I want to understand. I want to find myself in all of this work, and that's why I think it's fabulous what you're doing. And yeah, that was my comment.
I think there's a little bit of a dilemma, maybe. The first dilemma is that exactly what you've been describing, like, and the camera played this kind of role, like facilitating the possibility of having that insight. How this is one, and that would be much more intense, as you said, if we kind of like don't cluster but engage. The other aspect, however, is that, like, first of all, it's us, and we're like in the beginning of starting to understand and trying to figure out our relationships. So this is really like, yeah, it could be a movie. It's really like only like presenting, like as if the audience wouldn't play a role. So we have both, and not yet figured out, or maybe we are on a process of developing towards what we find more interesting. The reasons.
Yeah, but I think isn't that the thing, right? So it's not maybe the wrong word, but it's not an excuse that you're at that point. But that point is the point, and that's where, to me anyway, it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
To understand through your lens how I jump. And
Now you are quite resistant to jumping. And to me, it's impossible to write in front of an audience because I have a different focus.
Yeah.
So, but then it would be interesting. So, how can I then open up this process of focus?
Yeah.
Because I do walk around.
Yeah.
I like this, you know. I'm not sitting always at the desk. So I was partly performing.
Yes, because we were conscious of seeing you think about being seen, and that disturbed in a way the activity, which is what is so interesting. Well,
yeah, but that's probably the dilemma, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something in that line, like the question of temporality as well. Like, I guess for me to get into this, I need 2 hours. But it's an interesting question, how to make it open, like in which way could that be judged? I think there's something we started to discuss, like in this thing with observation. First, just to mention, like I think we continued this setup because of the dance, because we wanted to kind of redo almost the same that we did there, just to see how it resonates in a different setting and on. So we didn't really mention it this time, but I think it would have been nice. But I'm wondering, like in this point of observation, to me, it's still something quite interesting that we found out during doing this. And observation also is something that I know it's very interesting for quantum physics. And what, at least I am translating what you're saying of someone being in the audience predominantly in a point of observing something, but that it's far there, how to kind of like break this dichotomy, which is what we started to attempt to do with the camera, but I think it needs quite some time.
No, it's in a way it's a simple question, but it also resonates with things we've been talking about. I'm just curious to hear a bit more about the process. But the long process, in the sense that I understand you started like a year ago, but I don't know a lot of details. But I do have the understanding you started in a very open way, meaning like we didn't know exactly what was going to happen.
Still don't.
Yeah, but I'm because it's been more or less a year, right? I mean, I'm just curious about the transition, and especially concerning the starting points and the first questions, which I guess had to do with understanding the research of the other, in a way. And because the whole thing we've been talking now about the staging, and when you explain that that's the preparation for the intensity of the staging is part of the process, and also what Stephen said that there's something happening for us, because a lot of things are very staged and they work, because the pair becomes really this axis through which we look at the model of the pair and we go through all this. So there's something happening in this very event. But I'm very curious about how that happened, even though you told me the story, but I want to know more. Let's say in terms of what were the initial questions maybe, and how the planning a performance was meaningful for you. And I must say, because I'm more familiar with the artistic research, and I'm very curious to hear more from the physicists and on this point also, at least to start.
I think one of the main starting points was just meeting and discussing. So I think the first meeting was we were Like, we are all theorists. So what you saw today, like blackboard and computer, that's basically what theorists do. We don't go into a lab, we don't touch stuff, we don't poke experiments, we let other people, experts, do that. So that means our offices really look like that, like computer screens and whiteboards. And so for us it was kind of interesting to show you partly what we were doing and then also show the lab, because I think that's where the magic happens, but we don't have those. So we went there and there were lots of guests there. And the second part of that first day actually was us going to KDK, and I remember the kind of funny looks that we got when the most exciting thing that we saw was a blackboard in the corner somewhere. So we were walking down the hallway, somebody got his hair cut in the middle of the hallway, we walked on, and the thing that we got excited about was a blackboard. So that was kind of the funny thing, and so from there we started discussing about how do we do research, like what are the steps that we're taking, and especially how does it differ between the fields, like what is a research question for us, what is a research question for you, and then there was this kind of longer period of meetings where we kind of just tried to explore a bit of, kind of test the other a bit, like what's going on, how does the other, like not meant as kind of a disjoint thing, but just the artist or the physicist do research. And then there was this point when we realized that Venice was coming up, I think. And that meant, because we had committed to that we had to put all of these thoughts and all of these ideas and all of these discussions somehow on stage. And that was a very funny moment for me, because we met in Bremen. We met in Bremen and figured out that we basically had 48 hours to condense all these discussions into something that you saw on stage today, basically. And so that was a very interesting process for me, because we usually don't do that. We as physicists. Like, if I have a project, that project goes for, I don't know, half a year, 1.5 years, but you cannot shrink it, like you cannot condense it into a weekend, or you cannot condense it into 5 hours to make the thing. Like, making the thing takes the year, and there is kind of, I don't know, half a year research phase, half a year of programming, debugging, finding mistakes, starting all over again, because, well, if the math tells you no, the answer is just no, and you just go again. And that was very interesting for me to kind of having to live with that uncertainty of going somewhere, having basically nothing, and knowing the next time we meet, we're being on stage and we're going to perform that thing. So that was for me one of these moments when I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun, but be very different from what I would usually do. So maybe that's actually about the process. So for me, that was a bit of a roller coaster ride.
And about the questions you had at the beginning that led you to start, what have they changed? Have you found something, or I don't know?
I think one of the big questions that pops up all the time, and I think that's rightfully so, is when is artistic research, and where are the borders? Like, what do you have to do in order to make it research, and when is it? And now this is not meant as kind of diminutive, but just art. Like, there is no research part at the end of the artistic research part. And I think that's a very interesting question for us, because for us research has very strict rules. Like, if you can't put it into math, it ain't a theory. Which is obviously not the case here, so that's a much wider field, which is much more interesting than what we are doing in some sense. But also there's more of a justification that comes with it. And I think that is one of the big questions that at least we have been wondering all the time. Like, how clearly do you have to be able to formulate the question that you're asking in order to answer it with art?
Artistic practice.
Artistic practice, my bad.
Thank you. I think I don't need it, right? Yeah, thank you so much. I was invited in summer, so I saw the rehearsal, the last live of rehearsal. And yeah, I was just thinking about it again, and other people mentioned it. I think this part of training performative practices is so important, or so interesting, because I do work as a performer, and I was just imagining if Leiden University would pay you to have a 5-year training to become a performer, and then you just then you just continue your work, it could be so different because then you could, like, it would feel, I guess it would feel so different for you to perform your research, and then you could much more focus on doing the research than on this there's an audience, how can you do it? And in general, because you said this whole project that comes up here every month is about performing research. I think a lot of fine art schools there's not really performance training, but how to perform, like it's also a method, it's also a technique, which can be more or less learned.
Yeah.
I mean, this is again a dilemma, I guess, because I think also going with what Stephen just said before, the aim is not to perform in such a way that we are staging something that ought to be watched, but we are trying to open up practices for us and for probably the others. So of course, this hesitation with the notion of performance has a reason, but out of the like other notions for this kind of situation, we still call it a performance, but I'm not so sure if that's appropriate, to be honest. Because I absolutely agree with what you've said, and we are absolutely undermining any standard of okay? But maybe that's also necessary, because it's not about this kind of like as if. And that's, again, the dilemma, because we are trying to make it real, but of course this isn't real. And I do think that is one of the key problems of artistic research, in such a way that in the end you want to legitimize, or you want to show, or you want to communicate your process of researching in such a way that ideally that happens. What?
Yes, but I think that's exactly, like, you have to allow us to get lost, and otherwise it's always this performance, but the performance is the activity. The activity is, and that has to not know, I think.
Yeah, but this is like
For
an
me also.
honest question, because if I would imagine me being in such a situation, and like it's like Thursday evening, I just probably didn't have dinner, but I want to go to this event, you know, so I'm unprepared. I'm going to an event, and I'm confronted with some bits and bytes of quantum physicists I don't understand, then some artistic research. Okay. So how do you still facilitate the possibility of having that experience? Maybe that's exactly what I was already formulating, which is also the question for the end of an artistic researching process. How am I facilitating whatever kind of peer or non-peer audience to become part of my understanding and the process of understanding? And because in philosophy, you know, I'm not just simply saying this is the result, full stop. I'm writing a book, and the good thing about books is that I'm kind of inviting people in by reading sentence by sentence and chapter by chapter, going through my understanding process, so they can retrace what I've been trying to develop as a thought. So I'm trained in that. Apparently it works, but I'm not that much trained in this kind of question. How can this formulation can be presented in such a way that I'm not only putting like in bold letters, this is my insight, but giving this way, this method to be retraced a possibility. That is an open question.
Maybe, well, I was thinking, the thing is that you were all guys sitting around the table with different disciplinaries is already a very interesting thing in itself, I think. So it's like performance, yes or no, or how to make yourself ready for it. I think it's just you guys being sitting here and tackling an intellectual problem and seeing how you all want to cooperate and seeing the different insights would already be very interesting. So I wonder if you even need to do a stage performance or anything, or we can just discuss. So like the project you mentioned before, I think is something would be very interesting to see, that you just ask questions to each other. Like I'm seeing it like this, but I'm like hindered by this and this. How would you see this, or how would you tackle this? And I think that's the beauty of all these different disciplines coming together, that you can give each other insights. Because that's also the thing with science, it's often very dispersed into different fields, and they don't communicate that much with each other. I think that's missing science in general, and this is very cool that you're all here together. So I think it would be cool if that just is the performance, you guys sitting here and discussing it with your own lenses.
When we had our meeting to plan this event, we were also discussing again, should we change some things or just leave it like this, and how do we make it? And I think this is also a little bit an answer also to the process, that then we were also thinking like, yeah, but what if we just put the discussion on stage? Because this is actually what we're doing mostly when we're meeting, that mostly we discuss and try to understand each other, so maybe this is already kind of a collective practice, so yeah. But also then the question is, if it's also about artistic research, or the artistic research part of it is then also, is it only discussing, or do we also implement it somehow in our practice? And then again, I mean, and it would be interesting to think about what would the discussion be then in terms of that. Like,
yeah, and I think also this performance before is to invite discussion with the student. That was the idea. We agreed on, like, we thought, we indeed noticed that our discussions were very interesting, and we're like, oh, it would be also nice to involve other people, and the question was like, yeah, but how do we get people just into the discussion? We cannot just start like a performer, I mean, just let you in the room and now, oh, let's ask your questions, or let's talk. So we're like, okay, we do a performance to invite a discussion. I guess that was the
But then I think when we do this, we run into this issue, right, where like everybody is trained on their role. Like an audience comes to watch a performance, and a performance is a practice, rehearsed thing that is it. But we're doing that while at the same time not wanting to do that because, at least for me, what is the other way to do that so that it makes sense for the question? And yeah, if we just sat down here and we're like, okay, let's talk. Like I 99% of me doubts that any of you would even enter into the discussion until the end of it anyway. Just because that's what an audience does. You come, you sit, you watch, and then you leave. So then how do you, So sorry, I am also an audience member. I don't want to minimize, anyway.
But to me, that also brings up another question, because what we tend to do is like we kind of intervene into artistic situations, like this is more a place where sometimes probably discussions take place, art or performances take place, but rarely a conference of physicists. So, and that's another thing. What at least I would love to develop is like, how can we enter there?
Which was actually the topic of the last discussion that we had, right?
How can we also open up or provoke, like not against, but with researching practices in natural sciences, this kind of different understanding of the doing of the research. Because to be honest, it's much easier. I mean, everybody's interested in you guys without knowing anything. We all know about that. Was another mission we've had. We really want to overcome like entanglement, superposition, blah. Because they are so like about how in cultural studies or in the arts these terms are used. On the other hand, of course, we are annoyed what they think is art, part. But I think beyond that, so the next mission would be not only to use the sheet as the fashionable attitude of quantum physicists in the field of art to kind of have these discussions, but also, to find a way of sneaking into their...
Maybe just as a comment, the quantum psychology, or whatever that was, I can guarantee you there is no quantum in that psychology. And I can also guarantee that the money that they're making is so unethical that it hurts. So, like quantum healing, quantum, and then you put anything else in physics there, is most probably either a hoax. Yeah, well, full stop, it is. or not quantum at all. So,
but that was the idea to bring them here.
Yes,
it was hoax, and you were very, very conscious of not trying to be consistent, at least in your disciplines, and not to merge.
Yeah, like this was one of the that was a very nice question. We did kind of a discussion session in children's once, and an editor of a journal asked me what I think about using quantum in other contexts. And well, obviously I don't own the work, right? So I can't forbid you to use it. I would just say if you want to use it to make money of it, I find that highly unethical. Like, of course, if you don't have a better word for what you're saying, please use the word. But for example, if you use entanglement, and you think that you can change it with intermixing or interchanging, then you don't need entanglement. Then you can just say, I mix or I exchange or whatever. Entanglement has a very particular meaning and a very particular mathematical meaning. So the reason why we say entanglement is that we're too lazy to quote the formula every time. So there's a reason why we use these words and exactly that word in that meaning, in that sense. So I couldn't exchange entanglement for anything else if I say a sentence with entanglement. If you can, just think about whether you need to work there.
What I'm hearing, because like a lot of what we discussed, yes, coming together, but we also are part of academia in a way, that there are disciplines and there are borders between these things, and like, so there is a movement of resistance and transformation. But anyway, there's always like an inherent resistance there, and we are constantly getting in contact with this, and I find that interesting to also find out in myself, where am I getting resistance here when they're getting inside that, and why? And because again, like I'm very interested to this intermingling of things, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's become so visible to me how you have an internal language and an empiric kind of attention to each other with those words, and I can kind of sense a layering of discussions about specific words and how to use them. And I was wondering if you're developing kind of a lexicon. I know each group has a way to talk to each other. And at least for us, that was one of the starting points. We're too lazy. The glossary.
Yeah, like that's So the kind of what we did in the beginning was we wrote down words, and we wrote, like the physicists wrote down definitions of words, of physics words in kind of understandable language, so without that part, but just in words that are hopefully understandable. And I appreciate very much when the artists do that for artistic words or philosophical words that they use, that they have a very meaning for them, and for me it's just another kind of Latin or Greek sounding word that I associate very little with.
Philosophy is another notion like entanglement, like the philosophy of my, I don't know, my bakery.
So we started doing that. Thank you for the motivation to keep that up and maybe make it a bit more rigorous. Yeah.
I think we need to start wrapping up. Is there any last pressing question? No? Well, thanks a lot to the group. We share all of us, always with us. Thanks everyone for coming.